On Sunday, September 17th, 1,481 C-47 transports took off in broad daylight from 24 British airfields with 20,000 paratroopers on board. Towed behind the transports were hundreds of CG-4A gliders carrying men and materiel.
Let's talk about the combat glider, the CG-4A. An 85-foot wingspan. It would carry 1.5 tons, 3,000 pounds, plus the 2 pilots up front. But they were flying coffins. I mean, there was no return. So the idea was to get your people down or get your load down, whatever it is, and then become an infantryman, which is what we became.
Harry Schmid of Sacramento had been studying accounting when he was drafted in 1942 and first planned to become a medic. But then he said he didn't want to change bedpans for the whole war and volunteered to become a pilot. When his weak eyes kept him out of a fighter cockpit, he settled for flying a glider with the 82nd Airborne instead and found himself part of Operation Market Garden. Captain Dwayne Luce of Mobile was also on his way to Holland aboard a glider. The father of 2 small children, he had left his family's cannery business to join the 82nd Airborne when the war started, and had survived Sicily and Italy, and 33 days of fighting in Normandy.
I got out over the North Sea there, and I pilot had a parachute on. I told him, I said, look, you might as well take that parachute off because you're not leaving here without me. And I said, you got your ass shot. Who's going to land this thing? He says, you are.
Too fast a speed with a CG-4A will kill you because you're talking about a fabric airplane with nothing but little aluminum struts. And these guys come in at 90 miles an hour and crash into something, and boy, they just disintegrate. In all my combat missions, I never came in at more than 50 miles an hour. I took the chance of getting hit by ground fire and flak, but I wanted to get my people down and get down on the ground.
This is Edward R. Mount. In just about 30 seconds now, 19 men will walk out onto Dutch soil. There he goes. You hear him shout? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Every man out. I can see their chutes going down now. Every man clear. Hanging there very gracefully, like nothing so much as khaki dolls hanging beneath a green lampshade. The whole sky is filled with parachutes. All going down so slowly, it seems as though they should get to the ground.
Things went well at first. Dutch citizens poured into the streets to greet the Americans. The 82nd Airborne, including Harry Schmid and Dwayne Luce, seized 3 bridges near Nijmegen, then dug in and waited for the British armor to race up from Belgium and relieve them. The 101st Airborne took 4 bridges near Eindhoven, and when the Germans blew up a 5th, managed to rebuild it overnight. They too waited to be relieved. But when the 10,000 men of the British 1st Airborne came down 7 miles from Arnhem, the Dutch crowds that turned out to greet them slowed their advance. Only 500 of the soldiers managed to reach the all-important bridge across the Rhine. Meanwhile, word of the Allied plan had fallen into enemy hands. and by the end of the day, German panzers had surrounded the outnumbered British at Arnhem. Bad weather delayed airborne reinforcements for several days, and when a parachute brigade of free Poles was finally dropped in, it was shot to pieces. The British armor that was meant to meet up with the paratroopers on the ground and then spearhead the advance into Germany soon found itself under attack from enemy artillery. Smashed tanks and vehicles caused massive traffic jams that took hours to clear.
The idea of the whole mission, of course, was to control the bridges while Montgomery came up with his tanks. Well, they shot him all up, and he didn't get there for 7 days. So we were in the front lines all that time. We were not attacking the enemy, but we were defending perimeters.
This was not the way it was supposed to go. Harry Schmid, Dwayne Luce, and the men of the 82nd Airborne found themselves struggling just to hold on, with no tanks and no heavy weapons.
And they had two ways of going after you. They'd either do shells that exploded on the ground, or they used airbursts. You're worried about those airbursts because they would burst about 20 feet above you, and there was shrapnel everywhere. And just a little piece of shrapnel could hit you, you know, and you're gone.
They had better weapons in many cases than we did. He's talking about their 88s. They were great weapons. Very high velocity. It was so damn fast that the bullet got there before the sound did. It was zip bang. Man, it was a terrible weapon to fight. We all dreaded the 88s, I guess.
And when you're in a mission where you're behind enemy lines, you worry because nobody knows anything. You don't know whether the Germans are coming, they aren't coming. And that's probably the most thing that mentally bothers you, is that you don't know what's going on.
As the Americans held their ground near Nijmegen and Eindhoven, the surrounded British at Arnhem were being slaughtered. Finally, after 9 long days, Montgomery abandoned his plan and ordered the survivors to withdraw by boat. Market Garden had been the largest Allied airborne operation of the war, and the most disastrous. 17,000 Britons and Canadians, Americans and Poles, were killed or wounded or captured before the operation was abandoned. More casualties than the Allies had suffered on D-Day.
You don't like to see what you see. You don't like to see what you see. I mean, it's very disquieting to have your friends go on, and some of them pretty terribly mauled and things. But that's part of it. War is not a pleasant activity. You kind of need to keep your sense of humor a little bit to get through it.
The Allies had won themselves a narrow 65-mile corridor across Holland. But the rest of the British and American troops, including Duane Luce and Harry Schmid, had to stay where they were to hold it, battling the deepening cold as well as the relentless German shelling. They would be left there for weeks.
As a boy, I spent a good time in the woods, and I think my experiences with that helped me survive. And I think the little man upstairs had his hand on my shoulder, and I got hit once across the helmet, and it didn't penetrate my helmet, but it'll make you change your underwear if you have any. But that's the only time I got hit. No, it's kind of like a bad dream, I guess. Wouldn't want to do it again. Couldn't do it again, I don't guess.
It was clear now that the war in Europe would not end before winter. In Waterbury, Connecticut, just before Pearl Harbor, Miss Virginia Fleming had married Staff Sergeant John Soden, who had worked at the U.S. Rubber Company in Naugatuck. They had a daughter, born while Soden was in training, and he had been home to see her just once before leaving for France in the summer of 1944. On September 10th, after volunteering to lead a patrol across the Moselle River, he was hit in the leg. He had his $1 million wound, his ticket home, he told a friend, and was carried to a barn where he was to receive treatment. Then, a German shell hit the barn. A few days later, Virginia Soden got a telegram regretting to inform her that John was missing in action. She wrote to him right away.
To my dearest husband and Daddy, I pray to God you will be okay and be back soon, as I don't know what I'd ever do. But you're coming home, darling. And we'll enjoy life like we're supposed to be entitled to. Well, sweets, your daughter is okay. I still kiss her every night for her daddy. But the poor little dear doesn't know what it's all about. She's so like you, darling, in every respect. The check you sent for $40 came. Thanks a million, darling. Every little bit will help for our future, right? Well, John, I can't seem to write anymore. Except I still love you more than ever. I pray you'll be safe and home soon.